I remember the day that I was almost murdered at the age of 18. I remember what it felt like sitting in a corner of my bedroom that had been turned upside down by the person that I loved. I remember what it felt like to have my top ripped into pieces, and I remember what it sounded like. I remember looking into his eyes and begging him to stop, but he just wouldn't listen. I remember looking at my top and I remember it being into pieces, but it had blood, which was his blood, on my t-shirt. And I remember being so frightened and thinking, this is the day that I'm gonna die. 1 in 4 women, according to Women's Aid, experience domestic abuse since the age of 16. And 1 woman every week is murdered. And in my case, I was almost a statistic and I was almost a headline of femicide. However, the issues that occur when we don't respond to domestic abuse is that violence escalates. In my case, that wasn't the first incident where I was almost murdered. The abusive relationship started from as young as 17. But throughout my journey of life, there was different experiences that I went through where I was dishonored. From the age of 5, as a young girl, I was sexually abused. And for me, that was a very difficult moment because at the age of 5, what do you even have to be touched? What do you even dress like for you to be touched? I remember being sexually abused. That was something that channeled and followed me throughout most of my teens and my adult years. And though the perpetrator thought that they were touching my body, they were actually touching my soul. I remember being scared, but also thinking that I have to trust in this person because they're the adult and they're supposed to safeguard me and look after me. At the age of 13, I was groomed. I was exploited, and I was just a young student in secondary school who should be thinking about their GCSEs, who should be thinking about their grades, about the things that they want to achieve. But instead, I was being groomed on the streets of London. When we think about grooming and exploitation, we sometimes think that this happens abroad. We think that these things happen in poorer countries, but this was literally happening in one of the cities that they say never sleeps, here in London. At the age of 17 is when I entered an abusive relationship. But at the time, I wasn't aware of this. It started through emotional abuse, but the way that I grew up, I didn't even know what that looked like. So it started with my mum's contact number being deleted from my call log. It started with, I want to know where we are, and I would be getting 128 calls a day. This escalated because no one responded. Abusers think they can continue to abuse victims when they learn that there's no consequences. It is also an economic burden that causes when we don't rise up in her honor. And we understand that domestic abuse isn't just a woman's issue, but it's a society issue. It's something that we as a community can create a safe world for women and girls around the world. I remember thinking, why does no one rise up for me? Like I mentioned, I was sexually abused at the age of 5. And no one realized, though there was signs that showed that I was very advanced for my age, though there were signs in the way that I behaved, in the way that I thought, my thoughts at that age, that something was wrong, but no one stepped in and asked, are you okay? I remember when I just wanted someone to see the pain that was deep inside of my soul, that the color of my hair or whatever that I was wearing that day would not outshine. But instead, people commented on, you've got a new hairstyle today, perhaps, or you're doing so well in school. But people didn't know that the reason why I did so well in school was to hide away from the trauma that would choke me every night because of the trauma that I experienced at such a young age. And domestic abuse doesn't happen in isolation. Many people who find out about my story are like, you? Someone like you can go through domestic abuse? But you're a black young woman. You're strong. You're meant to be strong. You're one of the eldest daughters in the household. So surely you should know how to stand up and how to be an example. But how can you stand up to be an example for others around you when no one has ever stood up for you to lead that example? So through this experience, I realized that domestic abuse is something that doesn't just happen in isolation, but it happens at homes, in communities, and in different places. What happens when we don't rise in honor is that a girl like myself, unfortunately, finds herself in a situation where she thinks there's no way out. I remember being in that room at just 18, doing my sixth form studies to go into university and to study to become a marriage counsellor. But that all, in that split moment, felt like it was a dream that was going down the drain. Because not only was that the worst incident where I was almost murdered, I was almost bricked from that relationship that I was in. I was almost stabbed, and I was taken to the 20th floor of an estate in a boiler room where I was almost raped and thrown out the 20th floor. My wig went out the window, my left earring went out the window, and he looked at me and said, "You know you're next." An 18-year-old girl that had just came from sixth form, hoping to go home to see another day, had almost seen her life being killed at the hands of someone that she loved and trusted. I then was threatened in the relationship where I was almost thrown into the river. Again, these were situations that were not happening in isolation. These were domestic abuse incidents that were happening out in public, but people would not stand up for me. It was only on the aftermath. And it got so bad that I was raped in that relationship. That's how my virginity was taken. And on the day that I was raped, I remember trembling and shaking and thinking, if my mum finds out, what's going to happen to me? Because we look at that with honor. We look at that as something that you keep until marriage. How do you explain to your mum from a West African background that you are no longer a virgin and not at your choice, but at the choice of your abuser? I remember shaking and trembling, and it didn't stop then. I was raped numerous times where I'd lost count. I was constantly going to the pharmacy to get a morning after pill because I knew that I didn't want to get pregnant, because he told me the day that I become pregnant, I will never, ever be able to leave and that I will be stuck with him. So I understood that I needed to get out. But even then, when I went to the pharmacy, when we speak about rising in her honor and being part of that as a community, the pharmacist told me, "You've exceeded the amount of morning after pills you have taken. You should use protection." No one stepped in and realized that if I had exceeded the amount of morning after pills that I've taken, that maybe it's actually not my choice. But I understood that I could change things around. And this happened when I realized that when we stand together as a community, we can create this change that we want to see. And that looks like speaking up when you see something. The day that I was almost murdered in the corner of my room, someone heard me screaming. Matter of fact, someone saw me naked because I was stripped naked and beaten, and I was being strangled back in. And a neighbor that I never even knew existed called the police. She responded because she understood my honor. She respected me without knowing me. We had never bumped into each other. We had never had a conversation together. But she picked up that phone call and made sure that I was safe. It allowed me to respond to the cry and the devastation that we see in this world around gender-based violence. So what happens when we rise in honor? What happens when you rise up for that woman? What happens when you rise up for that girl? You help her to not only understand that she's valuable, but you help her to believe it, to see it, and to walk in it. And this is what happened when my teacher stood up for me and she questioned, "Are you okay?" That wasn't something that I was usually asked, because everyone saw me as this strong young black girl that has a loud voice, but didn't realize that silence traumatizes that voice. It takes away your innocence, it takes away the vision you have for yourself. But I understood that if I have people in my corner fighting for me, advocating for me, comforting me, that I could overcome. So how can you respond to the issue of domestic abuse in the community that you're a part of? You can be a friend that believes, you can be a sister that comforts, and you can be a teacher that understands contextual safeguarding and follows up. You can be a man that is an ally and that holds other men accountable for the things that they get involved in and the things that they say. My neighbor saved my life, and it reminds me back to my open where I remembered, and when I think about it now, that I almost thought I was going to die. But I didn't, because someone responded and saw my life worthy of honor. And because someone saw that I was able to find my platform, She Walks in Value, which looks at empowering women and girls around the world. I am now a global keynote speaker. I've also been elected as the chair of the Violence Against Women and Girls Forum in 2 boroughs in London, and I was named the Daily Mail's Inspirational Woman of 2025 this year. And even though I've been able to accomplish all these things, I've been able to go around the world. Last year I went to Iceland to meet the president as a global woman leader. But because someone understood my honor, it empowered me to use my voice to help other women not find theirs, because I believe every woman has a voice, but to challenge them to use their voice. I remember what it felt sitting in that room and feeling like life is over for me. But today I'm happy, I love myself, and I've been able to help women through a film that I created called The Power of Response, which looks at the power of when we respond to women in crisis, the change that we can create. And today I am no longer that same girl that didn't have a voice, that didn't believe in herself. Today I am someone that can stand here with my head up, with my heels high, and with a proud smile on my face to say, but because someone understood my honor, it empowered me to use my voice to help other women not find theirs, because I believe every woman has a voice, but to challenge them to use their voice. I remember what it felt sitting in that room and feeling like life is over for me. But today I'm happy, I love myself, and I've been able to help women through a film that I created called The Power of Response, which looks at the power of when we respond to women in crisis, the change that we can create. And today I am no longer that same girl that didn't have a voice, that didn't believe in herself. Today I am someone that can stand here with my head up, with my heels high, and with a proud smile on my face to say, I love myself. I didn't need a guy to tell me that, but that came from the inner work that I did and through the support of the community who believed in my voice and who held a space for me. So today, I ask you to invest in women, to believe in a woman's voice. Change comes not only through speaking, but change comes when we listen. Because when you listen to a woman or a girl, you validate the voice that has been silenced for far too long. So I ask you to rise up in her honor by believing in her. I ask you to rise up in her honor by creating a space where she's able to share her story and receive the help that she needs. I ask you to rise up in her honor to help her to understand that a bad background does not mean that she has to leave her back on the ground. I ask you to rise up in her honor because you can be the person that saves another or a woman, girl's life like the way my life was saved. And today I'm not a headline of a femicide, but I'm a headline of a woman making global change. Thank you.